And it seems like Israelis might be just as invested in the upcoming U.S. election as Americans. After all, the Trump administration's policies toward Israel seem to have had a huge impact on his campaign. A car convoy carrying U.S. Republicans living in Israel made its way this week to the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem in a show of support for Donald Trump, bringing the race for the White House onto the streets of Israel a week before the U.S. election.
What you see here today is one of the most amazing expressions of popular support for President Trump and Vice President Michael Pence and the whole Republican Party. They love Israel. We love them. We love America.
Today, I'm here because we believe that Donald Trump is a hero. Check it out. Donald Trump is a hero not only because of what's going on with Bahrain and Israel peace, Sudan and Israel peace, United Arab Emirates and Israel, finding peace. I don't know what the deal of the century will bring, but I do know that this is a time where we have to stand together as friends and as allies.
Now let's hear from Marc Schulman. He's an expert on U.S. Israel relations, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So first of all, the U.S. election is in just a few days. Trump told Fox News yesterday that there could be up to even 10 countries to normalize ties with Israel. Will he try to push some of those through before the election, and is that even possible?
No, I don't think it's possible at this point. We're 6 days away from the election. I think he even said yesterday or the day before that any additional ties will have to wait until after the election. So I don't think anything else is going to happen between now and then. And ultimately, it's really not dependent so much on President Trump. It depends on what Israel does and what these Arab countries do.
Right.
So I don't expect anything will happen between now and next Tuesday in this regards. He's also been overthinking that this will help him, particularly electorally. The American people really don't care about this at all. So it's a side issue. It's important to us here in Israel. It's not very important in the United States at the moment.
Well, that leads nicely into my next question. We already have, as part of the Abraham Accords, we have normalization deals with 3 different countries. This isn't helping Trump in the polls at all?
No, not in the slightest bit. I mean, he can point to that as one of his very, very few foreign policy successes, because when it comes to the area of foreign policy, he has not had very many successes. So he could say, look at these accords, I've made some success. But the American people right now are interested in 2 things, COVID and the economy. And, maybe some people are worried about civil unrest, but no one is particularly concerned about foreign affairs generally, and specifically nothing that's going on. I mean, look, there's been no wars or anything else in terms of us and the Arab countries or anything that reaches the level that Americans even are paying attention to. It makes it page 5 in newspapers, online. Maybe Fox News covers it towards the beginning of a broadcast, but other than that, it's having no impact at all in the United States as far as I can see. Amongst the Jewish vote, it's a counterpoint for those people who oppose Trump. People who support him can say, look what he's doing in terms of the Abraham Accords and the peace with the Gulf states. And that's a strong point, let's put it that way, in the Jewish-Israel equation, shall we say. But beyond that, and the American people at large, I don't think it makes any difference at all.
Well, another move by Trump for Israel, the State Department announced that the U.S. will now fund scientific research projects in the West Bank and the Golan Heights. What is behind this move now, and why? Is it just because of the upcoming elections?
It's because of the upcoming elections and David Friedman, who really has been more the representative of the settler movement to the Israeli government and to some extent the American government. And that's been his greatest interest. Don't forget, he was involved with the settler movement long before he became ambassador to Israel. And he's saying, well, there's a chance that Trump may lose. So let me get whatever I can get done now and things that can be done by executive order. And I think this can be done. I'm not totally sure, by the way, whether this really is going to have any effect. It specifically affects the Ariel University. And of course, who's the biggest donor to Ariel University? Sheldon Adelson, who of course is one of the biggest Trump supporters, financially and otherwise. So it's being done right now because it can be done right now. And David Friedman is trying to leave a mark on his ambassadorship in the ways that he considers positive.
Interesting. There are hundreds of thousands of eligible voters in the U.S. living in Israel. Are you getting the feeling that most of them are pro-Trump? I mean, we just took a look at a video of some U.S. Republicans on their way to the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, holding pro-Trump flags. Is there an equal pro-Biden movement, or are Israelis mostly pro-Trump?
Okay, American Israelis, let's not talk about Israelis generally. Israelis generally are pro-Trump. American Israelis, I think, are pretty much divided. Mark Zell, who leads the Republican, is very outspoken and he makes loud noises. But most of the pro-Trump Israelis are, to by and large, living in the settlements, are by and large religious. On the other side of the equation are the Americans living in Tel Aviv, not so religious, not so right-wing, and they're very much pro-Biden. So they don't make as much noise as the pro-Trump, and they didn't do a big rallies like the Trump people. It's like America too. Trump people do big rallies, and Biden people go out and vote. So I think it's pretty evenly divided. I don't think they make as much noise as the pro-Trump people do.
All right, we'll have to wait and see what happens in this much anticipated election. Marc Schulman, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a great week.
You too.